The Green Bay Packers are 3-1. It certainly wasn't pretty in week 4, but they got the job done. We will talk about the best performances, our biggest worries, our biggest concerns, maybe what we're most confident about. We'll look ahead to the Giants week as well. It is all coming up on the NFL Week 5 edition of The Final Dump.
It's time!
News dump.
News dump, yay!
News dump.
I mean, that's kind of a loaded question.
It's a landslide!
It's The Final Dump, presented by Game On Wisconsin. And welcome to The Final Dump. I am Brendan Dworzinski. He is Matt Freilich. We are so excited to be with you here again this week to recap a Green Bay Packers win. The Packers 3-1 on the season following an ugly and stressful and anxiety-ridden win over the New England Patriots 27-24. We've got so much to get to over the course of the show today. Levels of confidence and concern going forward with this team. The ability to sustain this kind of football and keep winning this way. Aaron Rodgers talked about that. We'll get to that as well. Offensive line questions, certainly some run defense questions as well. Plus, we will look ahead to the Week 5 matchup in London, the first international game for the Green Bay Packers as they take on the New York Giants. And we'll get, of course, to significant to some. Matt, look, before we get into any of the specifics, I said it last week. In fact, it was the name of the show last week. What is the best part of winning ugly? Well, it's winning. But I'll be honest with you, that's a much cuter phrase when it happens once in a while, not pretty much every time you've won in the first 4 weeks of the season.
There's a lot of stuff from this game that it made sense. Like going in, predicting it was like, okay, this makes sense. Like 9.5, 10-point favorites. Like it's still Bill Belichick on the other side. Patriots are going to have to run the ball to even be in contention of this game. Absolutely. We tease the fact that maybe the pride of Western Kentucky will get an opportunity in spite of Brian Hoyer, being injured yesterday. Zappy gets out there. So we saw some backup quarterback play, but I didn't expect I expected the Packers to be able to run the ball as we saw more injuries cycled out through the week on that defensive line, particularly like Lawrence Guy. But then again, like I never expected there to be 51 points scored. So like that, it's just it's a mess. It's nasty. A win's a win. Doesn't feel great, but at the end of the day, I think the silver lining is it's still Bill Belichick led defense. Like it's still a super, super tough team. I know it's tough to like see that Bailey Zappi's back there in the third string and they're truly running with like 6 offensive linemen and this whole just like ground and pound couldn't stop it. We'll get into that, but overall, a win's a win. Beautiful day in Lambeau Field, probably the last beautiful home game that we will have here in Title Town, but thus we're still with 3-1. That's all that really counts.
I have to bring this up because we were talking about Bailey Zappi so much on last week's show, and we have to give ourselves credit because we were in front of Bailey Zappi the entire week going into that contest yesterday against the Patriots. But I knew I was going to have something way back when. Let me take you back just over a year ago, September 25th of 2021, Western Kentucky versus Indiana. And how about this tweet from the archives from your boy shouting out Bailey Zappi for getting us an over in some MAC versus Big Ten action. I knew I was going to have one somewhere in the old tweets shouting out Bailey Zappi, and I had to go and make sure I found it before we went on the air today. So credit to him. First rookie in the NFL to throw a touchdown pass this season. It is unfortunate it came against the Packers. It also probably shouldn't have counted because the play clock had gone like 3 seconds past expiration. But nonetheless, stressful moment for the Packers. But I knew somewhere in the old tweets I was going to have some sort of shout out to Bailey Zappi. So I had to make sure to get that on the show. Matt, as for the game itself, look, we can talk about the top performers and the best moments and the most stressful moments and all of that. But I don't know where this lies on the realist versus spin zone spectrum. So I'll ask you this question. Are you more concerned with the fact that the Packers had to go down to literally the last seconds of overtime to beat a team without its number one receiver and without its top 2 quarterbacks, plus plenty of other injuries throughout the game, and the fact that the Packers should have won by a lot and didn't? Or are you more confident, and you have growing confidence in the fact that the Packers have not even come close to playing their A game yet and are still 3-1 to start the season?
Generally pessimistic or realistic, depending who you're talking to. I'm going to go, against the grain on this. I'm pretty confident because everything they're doing is just small mistakes. Doubs, has that drop in the end zone. Geronimo Allison. When you see the side by side, there's the video that someone put out. Just absolutely hilarious how exactly that throw and that setup was. Romeo Doubs going to make strides, going to make some hiccups. You got Christian Watson involved. Special teams is performing very, very well. In our pre-production meeting, we did have some concerns of who's going to be the kick returner, punt returner going forward. I think they'll get that figured out. Everything else has been, I would say, extremely solid. A couple coverage issues yesterday, but I think they'll sort that out. We're still not competing at 100%. We haven't had a full team of our superstars out there yet. The 10 to 15 to 18 guys that make up this team, we still haven't had that there. And we probably won't have it next week. Thus, with Adrian Amos still banged up, we'll get to Elton Jenkins later about his injury. He's still nagging. Jair Alexander, does he go or does he not go with the groin? How does David Bakhtiari progress? Like, there's so much left. I think there's just so much left on there to chew that it's you can take a couple more bites and we're still not fully there. One thing that I definitely want to shoehorn in is Robert Tonyan finally getting involved with that touchdown. But I was pissed because I felt like they weren't throwing him the ball at all. He wasn't getting any targets. Andy Herman talked about today on the video episode on Pack-A-Day podcast on the YouTube side. Tonyan possibly still nursing that knee. He just looked so damn good the first week or two. It's okay, well, what's going on now? But only 2 targets yesterday, has that big touchdown. But I think there's a lot of things that you should be confident about, and there's a lot of things that they can prove on that you should even be more confident of. Because concerning, the Packers always start kind of sluggish like this. Rodgers seems always a little bit out of sync, but they're finding their way. They're leaning on the run game more and more. The defense is still not performing the top end of where it needs to be, but it's still doing really, really well. Super, super solid. So I'm very confident going forward in the next, I don't know, this lull stretch, if you will, even though they got to go overseas, some weaker competition they can get right.
I think for me, there's concern over the fact that the Packers haven't started a little bit faster. And we've talked about it before that so much of this roster is back from last season. I mean, if you want to look at the notable players who are new on offense, it's Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. And we'll get to them in a moment. And that's pretty much it. Everyone else has been around for some length or period of time. Anyone who's actually making a contribution so far. Defensively, that secondary has been together for, at least for a few of them, a handful of years now, or at least into their second year together. Linebacker, you've got to change there. Quay Walker getting some more snaps, but Devondre Campbell's been around. That defensive line, you add Jaron Reed, you throw in Devontae Wyatt as well once he eventually starts getting some meaningful snaps. This roster has mostly been together for the long haul, though, and the fact that you're starting off the season so slowly, that is a concern. But the spin zone of that and the optimistic side of it, and to be frank, the homer side of it is, again, the Packers have played a B game against the Bears. Is that the best they've played this year? Probably in terms of a full 60 minutes. And that was far from a great game for the Packers on either side of the ball. And yet they're 3-1 to start the season against a part of the schedule that's not, especially easy. It's not especially difficult. It's right about split down the middle. You get that win over the Buccaneers. That is a very meaningful win and could be very meaningful come the end of the season. The Patriots, you should have smoked them. I mean, let's be realistic here. As much as I can shout out my guy Bailey Zappi for getting me a non-conference over in college football last season, you should be able to beat a team that is out there with a third-string quarterback who was picked in the 4th round and has never played a single down before. So that part is concerning, but on the same token, there's so much more that this team can do, and there is so much more that this team can accomplish. And we'll talk a lot about that, about offensive line positioning and about the defense being able to grow a little bit later on in the show. I think I'm encouraged at least somewhat by the fact that Aaron Rodgers was awful in the first half, but much better in the second half. I'm encouraged by the fact that the young wide receivers are getting more involved. Christian Watson scoring a touchdown on the jet sweep. That's awesome. I can't wait for him to be more involved in the passing game a little bit, but seeing him get at least a little bit more run in the offense, that's positive. I think seeing Romeo Doubs suddenly become a favorite target for Aaron Rodgers is a big deal. I mean, Lazard had a huge game. The quietest 100-yard receiving game, I think, ever. 6 for 116. They flashed that at the end of the broadcast, and I thought, wait, really? He's got 116 yards? That sort of came out of nowhere. And especially with Romeo Doubs getting the attention since he's the new shiny toy for the offense. But there's encouragement there. Bakhtiari being back, that's obviously encouraging. And I think there's too much talent on the defensive side to not think this is going to turn for the better at some point. So I would say right now I'm probably 70 to 75% confident and optimistic about where this team is going and what can still be accomplished. But I will concede, and I know you've got some thoughts on Rodgers too, and we'll get to him specifically in a few minutes, but I can understand being somewhat pessimistic and concerned too, because, hey, this is supposed to be a Super Bowl contending team, and we're now 4 weeks into the year, and we haven't even seen a solid to good game for a full 60 minutes from this team.
Yeah, exactly. I love Christian Watson getting involved in such a short sample size of just like, we're going to give you end arounds. And I made a joke a couple weeks ago about, seeing the stereotypical person who is in that role. Christian Watson fits that role, but just his burst, his speed. There was a graphic that went out earlier today that just showed like his top end speed on that touchdown, 20 miles an hour and change. Like everyone else on that list was about a 30 to 40 yard, etc. 75, 74 yard play. His was 14 yards. He was able to get up to, top end speed, truly just going, east to west and then turns it upfield quickly and goes north to south. So it's a lot of positives to see from him. And I think, like you said, Romeo Doubs getting involved early and just being more comfortable with Rodgers. Yes, there's going to be those growing pains, but I think he's far, far, far above where, most rookie receivers are right now, even across the league, let alone a guy that was drafted super late and without a lot of expectations, even in his own draft class in Green Bay.
So the optimism is there. And I think there's legitimate, solid reasoning to be optimistic, but I think we also need to get to the fact of the matter with this game on Sunday and the fact that it was ugly as sin. I mean, this should have been a very solid Packers win. I mean, you take any number of plays out of this game or just have them go the other way, and the Packers win this game. The pick six right before halftime, you flip sides on that, completely different game, obviously. You want to take, I don't know, actually calling a delay of game when Bailey Zappi waited 3 seconds to finally get the snap off, that might change the game entirely. You could go to any number of things. Maybe at the end of the game, Amari Rodgers calls for a fair catch. They try the fair catch kick for the field goal to win. Packers were the last team to do that too, way back in 2008. I mean, you could go to any number of things in this game, and I'm not even scratching the surface on it, and it flips the other way. But in the end, the final product is the final product, and it's another ugly, gross win over a team the Packers should have been able to beat. Now, that's not exactly the same case as Tampa in week 3, because Tampa is a good team, or at the very least, it has a very good defense. Although, to be fair, they didn't really look all that great on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs this week. But Aaron Rodgers was asked about this post-game, and I believe it was Matt Schneiderman who asked him this question. We've got the video for you about whether or not this level of play and this type of win is sustainable for the Packers. Here's a brief clip of what Aaron Rodgers had to say, courtesy of the Packers.
So this way of winning, I don't think is sustainable because it's just puts too much pressure on our defense, and obviously I got to play better and will play better. But the second half is our kind of football.
Yeah, I mean, your kind of football should be throwing it all over the place, and your MVP, your 2-time defending, 4-time overall MVP, slinging the rock and having all sorts of different guys factoring in Dillon and Jones and Lazard and Cobb and Doubs and all these different guys. I'm right there with you, and I agree that we want to see a full 60 minutes that are good from Aaron Rodgers. 30 minutes first half, I mean, he was terrible. Even as a major Rodgers and quarterback apologist, he was awful going into the half. And I know you felt the same way about a lot of his play in the game, Matt. Second half, he was a lot better, but you need to play a full game. And the next couple of weeks, yes, the Giants are 3-1, but I don't think anyone is especially scared of the Giants. The Jets are probably better, but that bar is so low that it doesn't really mean a whole lot. You've got winnable games. Now, tough travel because you also have to go to London in the middle there for the game against the Giants. But what is it going to take to get to a better place? And do you think, Matt, that this can continue, that the Packers can just be hey, we're going to win gross games and just advance and survive that way? Is that something that this team can continue to do long-term, or at least long-ish term over the next few weeks while they figure things out?
And that's kind of what I'm confident on them, is because if you can win this ugly, now granted the caliber of team that they played, still Bill Belichick, but I mean, good golly. Like, that offense is abysmal. Like, that defense, too, is like, there's not a lot of top-end talent there. And, like, they're able to throw some guys out there and fool Aaron Rodgers a couple times, get some pressure on him. I think they can win ugly. It's just a matter of, like, you can't consistently do this. It's like just betting all in on every poker hand. It's like, eventually you might get it like 5 out of 5 times in a row, but that 6th time, it's like, well, then you're shit out of luck. You're going home. So I think eventually it's going to have to figure out, but like right now they're playing ugly, but they're doing some things right though. Like, the defense is still super, super solid. The run game's there. Special teams isn't blowing anything. And I think they can win this sloppy. Like he said, like Aaron said in the video, they can win this way, for a while. The defense can hold them, but it's not fair to them. Eventually it's going to, their back's going to break. They're going to be on the field too long, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to catch up with them, and it ain't right. So I think they can still win ugly for a while like this, but it needs to change quicker, sooner than later, because there is a tough stretch here. The travel, I think the opponents aren't that crazy, but at the end of the day, like, they're going to have to get right by the end of this month to be competing with some top end teams.
Yeah, I think when you play lesser opponents, you can get away with games like this because you don't necessarily have to win on the margins in the same way. But when you take on better teams later in the year, like, I don't know, Buffalo, or maybe another Super Bowl contender like Philadelphia, teams like that, you can't play that brand of football. Now, am I concerned about it? Not necessarily. I don't think we have a big enough sample size yet to say, hands up, this team isn't going to be able to play games like that. It's going to have to win these gross slog games. I don't think we're going to get to that point with this Packers team this year. I do also think you want to get out of this, not really rut, but you want to get out of this current situation, current circumstance as quickly as possible so that you've got some time going into those big matchups later in the year. Hey, you got to play the Vikings again. That's not going to be an easy game. They're 3-1 on the season as well. That's going to be a dogfight for the division in the NFC North this year. You want to be able to have some confidence going into those games. Yes, we can play that brand of football. Yes, we can clean it up. We know Rodgers can have a great game against anyone again. We know that any of our receivers or all of our receivers are going to end up making big plays. We know that the running backs are going to perform well, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not even getting to the defense yet. But you just want to be able to get there sooner rather than later. So you're not going into a big matchup and, hey, total grab bag. We don't exactly know what we're going to get in this game, so we're just going to hope for the best. You'd like to have a little momentum going into some of those bigger games, and this was not a momentum win. I think it's fair to say you had to win this game, like Aaron Rodgers also said during postgame on Sunday. You have to win this game at home, third-string quarterback, lesser talent on the other side. Yes, and 3-1, they all count the same once you get into the win and loss column. That's what matters in the end. But this was not wow, we're going to ride this wave of momentum going to London next week to take on the Giants and we're flying high. No, I mean, you were in the mud in this game, and it took a whole lot to beat a clearly inferior Patriots team. I do want to ask you, Matt, because you and I were talking about this during our pre-show meetings. Aaron Rodgers, so far this season, and specifically through this contest in week 4, what do you make of the play of the 2-time reigning defending MVP of the National Football League? Because I thought he was really good in the second half. It took me until very late in the game to sort of embrace, damn, he's been really good since halftime, because he was really bad in the first half. He wasn't the only one who was bad in the first half. Play calling didn't do him any favors, but through the start of the season, I don't think we've seen MVP Aaron Rodgers by any means. I personally don't think he's been dreadful except for the first half of this game. And to be fair, he wasn't all that great against Minnesota either. What do you make of what we saw from Rodgers in week 4 and what we've seen so far from him this season?
I think you said it best. It's like, it's not MVP caliber. He's not trying to defend his MVP trophy right now with the performance he's having. It's just it's not to where it needs to be. However, small sample size, 4 games. Truly, that first half, it was like you said, it was tough to get that taste out of your mouth going into the second half. I think I heard something today. He was like 4 of 11, worst passer rating in the first half in a half of football he's ever had, like in his whole career. It was really, really bad. I think some of that is just the chemistry with the receivers. We can keep using that excuse as long as we want, but because he's been able to throw to lesser receivers in the past, so it should be figured out sooner rather than later. Granted, it's only been 4 weeks. I think the run game's on his side, so he's not having to throw the ball as much, which, he's been one of the components forever and ever about tempo, rhythm, within the offense, having that long leash from Matt LaFleur and the way he does things. So that might be stifling it a little bit as well. Offensive line play, I think, somewhat is a key contributing factor. But at the end of the day, like, he's got to pick it up, because without an elite Aaron Rodgers, this team really isn't a Super Bowl contender. They need him to be elite, not just good. Like, he needs to be MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers for them to have a chance to make a Super Bowl. Like, they're going to have to do that. A team's going to be able to box up their receivers. I think that's just eventually going to happen. There might be some guys that get lucky, some of these younger guys, but I don't think we have the elite speed or physicality to break through unless, Romeo Doubs continues to elevate and Christian Watson comes onto the scene faster than he currently is. The run game is super solid. I don't know if you can win a championship on solely a team, gaining most of their yards on the ground. It's been done. It's been done recent. The Niners come to mind of just the way they've been able to get to Super Bowls, but you have to be able to sling the football, and I think Aaron Rodgers has to be able to do that. The defense makes me really, really optimistic that they can make a run, but I think Rodgers just has to get more into a flow. I don't know what it is. The chemistry looked super off on the first half, like just inconsistent across the board from all of his guys. I still don't know why they didn't get Tanya involved early. I think that's a great way to get him set up. Being Rodgers, they do that. They motion across either a receiver that's split out or the tight end. They kind of do the reverse bootleg, and sometimes you can find Tunyon that way and get upfield. It worked a ton in the first week, I think, or the second week. But they just weren't able to stop it. It was during the Bucs game. So, he needs to step it up. He's not where he needs to be yet, and I think it'll come around. I'm going to say the biggest contributing factor right now is the receivers, and once they take some other steps, he has some consistency there. I think with some guys that aren't injured and tweaked, it'll be a little bit better. But still a lot to be sought after.
I think once you're able to get a better relationship with some of these receivers, it's going to help. And I'm specifically talking about the rookies there. And I know there's been some unrest. I saw it on Twitter, especially in the first half on Sunday, that trust is overrated, figure it out, you're professionals, all that. I get that. And I understand that frustration. But again, not to beat the dead horse even beyond what I've already done in the last few weeks, but Christian Watson didn't play for half a training camp. Romeo Doubs is still a rookie, and not every rookie receiver is Justin Jefferson, who was just otherworldly right when he got into the league. Not every rookie is ready immediately. And Aaron Rodgers is a perfectionist, and he can be probably pretty annoying to play with. And I mean that really in a complimentary way, that he is so specific and wants you to do the exact right thing every time. It can be a slow developing process, but in the long run, if you can still win games while going through those growing pains and while trying to develop some of that chemistry and some of the exact things you need to do to have success in more important games, I'm willing to live with that. And I think to answer the overall question, can winning ugly continue? For the next probably 2 weeks, yeah, I think it probably can't, because your next matchup is against the Giants and then against the Jets back at home. You get a game against Washington on the road, taking on the Commanders as well. Packers historically don't have a great record in Washington, at least in recent history, but the Commanders look awful. And Packers pass rush against Carson Wentz, yeah, I think you can probably end up winning that game ugly. I don't like where the Commanders are going right now. So you can do that for a little while. You just have to have the perfect point of equilibrium, essentially, where you start playing tougher opponents and your relationships between offense and players and quarterback and receivers have all kind of hit a more balanced point and a more successful point. And it's going to take some time, because as much as I think, wide receivers as a position are probably overrated when you consider all the dudes who got paid, specifically thinking about, I don't know, Devontae Adams with the Las Vegas Raiders. As much as I think you can build a team without truly elite wide receivers, it also does take time to adapt things when your entire offense for years has been find out where number 17 is on the field and do anything you can to get him the ball. Obviously, something has got to change. There's a new role to a degree for Big Bob Tunyon. There's a different role for Alan Lazard, who's now your quote-unquote number one. Obviously, the rookies factor in differently. Randall Cobb is in a very specific role at this stage of his career. I think Rodgers is going to turn it around. I don't think he has been great. I think his perfectionist attitude has definitely made things harder early in the season. But when you demand excellence, if you're a good leader, you can usually get that out of your guys. And I am optimistic that this team is eventually going to get that. I want to real quick go to El Jefe, Jacob Westendorf on the Game on Wisconsin YouTube, who chimes in and says, tonight's trivia, who has more catches, Romeo Doubs in week 3 of the season or Allen Robinson all season long? Matt, I don't know if you know this. I literally saw Jacob tweet this right before he commented on our stream tonight, but I'll let you answer the question if you know it.
I mean, it's Jeopardy style. So who is Allen Robinson, right? It just has to be. There's no, like, I had him on fantasy for 2 weeks and I dropped his ass because he had like 3 targets or something. I'm like, this is not sustainable. Knowing that he's got 8 grabs, that being Romeo Doubs, and they're not even a full half into the game 4. Yeah, I'm gonna go with who has more? Romeo Doubs has more. Allen Robinson has less. Yes, I completely butchered that. So not Allen Robinson.
Not Allen Robinson is correct. It is indeed Romeo Doubs. Jacob, I cheated. I saw you tweet that right before you posted it, but I do appreciate that. Of course, any comments you guys have, leave them in the comments on the Game On Wisconsin Facebook or YouTube channels while we're live on Monday night, or tweet them at us during the week if you're listening to the podcast edition of the show. Sticking with the offense for one more topic, Matt, I do want to get to what's going on with Elgton Jenkins. We were so excited. I know I was over the moon excited when he was back and ready to go, probably earlier than at least I expected him to be. And we have talked at length during training camp and the preseason and into the year about how right now he's still probably your best option at right tackle, and that's why the Packers are sticking him there. I think it's fair to say that has not really worked for the last 2 weeks, and it's not an overwhelming criticism of Big E, because I still think he has the talent to play regularly at tackle, but right now it's just not quite working while he's coming back from the ACL tear. And we know for a fact, because we have seen it, he can play an all-pro caliber guard. The Packers are also having some issues at guard so far this season. What would you do in this situation if you're Stanovich and LaFleur and the rest of the offensive coaching staff to try to build the best offensive line possible? Now, we should note before we get to an answer for that question, this was brought up during Monday's press conferences, and as transcribed by Rob Demovsky of ESPN, LaFleur said originally Bakhtiari was going to go 2-1 with Yosh Nijman during the game on Sunday, like he did in week 3. They went 1 on, 1 off with each other, but Bakhtiari said, hey, I'm good to go. I'm feeling good. So he played the rest of the game. LaFleur then said on Monday, Nijman could move over to right tackle, which would then push Jenkins into guard. I don't know about you, Matt, but right now, given what we've seen from this offensive line to start the year and specifically over the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to feel like Bakhtiari, Runyon, Myers, Jenkins, Nijman from left to right is probably your most effective offensive line. Or hell, you don't want to put Yosh Nijman at right tackle? That's fine. Guess what? You drafted a kid number 50 from Wake Forest during the middle of the draft this year. Give me Zach Tom. Bring him to me and put him in the starting offensive line. I just feel like you've got to do some sort of tweak on that right side because that seems like a clear weakness right now.
I mean, I brought it up last week on the episode, and I was like, I was going to shoot from the hip here, see what sticks, and something stuck. Like he struggled yesterday against Matthew Judon. Elton did. He wasn't able to really move as much as we would normally expect from an athlete offensive lineman like that. They have equity throughout this whole offensive line. Zach Tom, love to see him out there. Not sure if he's suited for right tackle. We'll see. I think the biggest question mark is, well, it's 2 things. One, obviously, like how healthy is Elgton Jenkins? Like, let's just let's go back. Let's really assess this. What are we dealing with here? Is it pain? Is it, just fatigue from not having played? Like, where's the issue? And then the bigger one then I think is, can Yosh play right tackle? Because that was your biggest thing. I think you mentioned to me when I brought it up. You're like, hey, probably better at left. Don't know if he's a good right tackle. And that was what some of the tweets that I got in my mentions over the week were, just going back and forth with the clip. Like, yeah, probably, Yosh has played solid, but is he a right tackle? So I think that's the next thing. So the fact that Matt LaFleur even mentioned it, and I didn't see that tweet from Demovsky, so it's awesome you got that in there. Like, it's the fact that it's even thought about is probably it's not very far away from having it pen to paper. That is going to be the situation. I think the biggest thing, like I said, though, is Nijman. And then if he doesn't work out, then how do you pivot mid game? Do you put Elton back outside? How does that work? But I don't think there's a there's nothing wrong with speculating on it. And I think there's definitely some, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Elton at some point move back inside throughout the season. Who knows when that'll happen, but I just think they have so much offensive line talent. Like you mentioned, Zach Tom, like why would you not give some of these guys a chance to see what you have?
For me, LaFleur bringing that up on Monday during his press conference, I call it the terms and conditions principle. I don't know if you've ever read, you download something or you put in some new software and you actually click on, yes, I would like to read the terms and conditions. There's always stuff in there. We may use your information for advertising purposes. We may send your information to third parties for X, Y, and Z. There's no may about it. If you accept they are going to do that with your information, I feel it's very similar when you hear a head coach during a press conference say something like this. They're not bringing it up for no reason. He's not just saying that to say that. If he is saying, hey, look, maybe Josh Nijman can be moved over to right tackle, maybe that's something we can do, then that means the wheels are turning. That means there is at least a chance that we get to that outcome. And we've seen this Packers team, Matt, over the years. They're willing to move things around and change things, oftentimes completely unexpectedly. We don't need to mention last year's playoff game as an example of that. Why not try it now? Because what's the worst thing that happens? 3 weeks from now, you end up switching back and, okay, well, never mind, Josh Nijman, not the answer at right tackle. We don't think Zach Tom is ready based on what we saw in some game action. So, Jenkins, you're back out at right tackle. Big Dirt, Royce Newman, you stay in at right guard. That's what we're going to have to live with for the time being. Maybe you have to switch back, but I don't know why you wouldn't at least give it a go right now. Newman, I do not think has been very good to start the year. I'm not Brandon Thorne. I'm not Duke Manyweather. I'm not one of these all-world offensive lineman tape breakdown guys. Just my humble opinion, humble blogger and podcaster opinion. I don't think Newman has been all that good. I think Jenkins would probably be more effective on the inside. So why not give it a try? Why not mix it up a little bit and just see what you can do? Because again, worst case scenario, you switch it back. Maybe you have to switch it back in game. Best case scenario, you've got a better offensive line. Your quarterback is more comfortable. He's got more time in the pocket to pick apart a defense. And you can maybe string that along if you want to continue the chain reaction. You keep building trust with the receivers. The offense looks more fluid. You get more push for the run game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am at a point where I just don't know why you wouldn't give it a try. And I think based on that quote, it should be coming soon, or at least if it's going to come, let me put it that way, it'll probably come in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see Rasheed Walker mentioned in the mentions by El Jefe again. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Something to consider, but I think there's a couple other suitable pairs there. I would even be fine with Newman on the outside again. Like I don't think Rasheed Wallace gets a chance on the right tackle spot.
Rasheed Wallace, if he decided to play football, he probably would have been an offensive lineman.
I kept reading it. I'm like, that's not Rasheed Wallace. Don't say Rasheed Wallace.
Ball don't lie. Hey, I do want to get to the defensive side of the ball because I know you've been talking up the defense throughout the show today, and I think there's reason to be very confident about this defense.
Mm-hmm.
I know we already brought up, Bailey Zappi, they put up 24 points. I mean, it's a third-string quarterback. You're kind of going in blind to that situation. You don't know exactly what you're going to get. I can understand, hey, whatever, throw that game out. You still only allowed 24 points. You got the win, big deal. I do have some questions, though, about the run game and the run defense in particular, And the Packers knew all game long, even if Brian Hoyer was the one who was supposed to play, hell, even if Mac Jones had played, I think the Packers knew, hey, they're going to try to run the ball at us constantly during this game. Then it's Hoyer. Okay, yeah, that's pretty obvious. Then it's a fourth-round rookie, third stringer, and it's, okay, yeah, the Patriots are going to run the ball. Ramondre Stevenson is going to get the ball in his gut, and he is going to run directly at us. We know what is coming for most of the game. And they really didn't do a good job of stopping it defensively. Sam Holman, friend of Game On Wisconsin, he put this on Twitter on Monday, said he was doing some charting of the Packers defense in the game and said, if you take out third and long, this is Sam's writing here, Joe Barry basically abandoned the philosophy of the nickel defense is your base defense against New England. Green Bay was in the 3-4 front for almost 60% of those applicable snaps in this game on Sunday. And Matt, I got to be honest with you, and I saw some clips out there of the Packers in some unfavorable situations as well, some nickel looks. I know Ross Uglum from Packer Report put some clips, and what are you doing defensively when you know the run is coming at you? But I've got to be honest, when you're in that 3-4 base and you've got a group that should be your best against the run, and you still are not especially good at stopping it, that does let a little doubt creep into my mind, or at least a little concern creep in.
I mean, I've been giving them their flowers all episode, but it's truly time to take a look at the defense. There's two things that are going on. One, I wasn't sure how to interpret that tweet because I didn't see that from Sam. And initially I was like, wow, Joe Barry decided to counter finally, because I feel like he's been known to just stick in his stuff. And I've seen that a ton in 2022. Switching to the 3-4, not being able to stop, that's super scary. Like, if you can't stop a team and you get down and you bring the bodies into the box and you have 7 dudes on there and you can't stop it, like that is alarming. But also too, it's like, well, how the hell, like, I don't even know if you had to do that. You should be able to sell out just knowing that they have 6 offensive linemen there at times. Stevenson and Harris, like, they're not really going to get the ball out of the backfield as much. Like, it was really just they're going to run the snot out of the ball and see if they can do it. And they kept doing it. So my biggest thing is, one, Joe Barry just switching from what's not working. And then 2, like, I mean, because what he's doing right now is it's fine. He's putting players in positions, but there's so many athletes, like, they're really just making plays. Like, they could call really any defense. And I think some of these plays are still going to be made. But the big thing is just like the run D. Like, if you can't stop the run, and this has been the bugaboo for the team for how many years, and I thought it was a little bit more repaired, but not the case. Like, Kenny Clark definitely was frustrated throughout the game yesterday. I want to say they probably did some really good stuff, just blocking him, which makes sense. Super savvy veteran group up front for the Patriots. But he didn't really pop too much. He got, the personal foul penalty, just like I said, which is rare from Kenny Clark. You imagine that he was getting frustrated with the way they were handling up front, but you got to stop the run. End of the day, like, it's abysmal. I wish I had some statistics in front of me, like where they're ranking right now. It's got to be in the bottom 25. Or excuse me, the bottom 5. I want to say I saw a graphic before the Bucks game, and they were like 31st at the time. Now, that was a short sample size. Obviously, they got ran on quite a bit in that Bears game. Nonetheless, the run D's got to come around. Like, and you would think it would be there with Devondre Campbell still being up the middle, and then you add J-Ron Reed. You have all these other pieces that are still in the box. I don't know why it's not working. You have some of these massive human beings between Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton. Like, why can we not stop the run? Why can we not have a guy like Dean Lowry or the 2 gentlemen I mentioned take up some blocks so Kenny Clark can make plays? And if he can't make a play, one of those interior backers, coming down to have some run support. It's just, I don't get it. I don't see why, but something's got to change. And Joe Barry's got to just change faster. Like, he's so slow. It's not run defense entirely for him. It's just like, dude, like, I feel like he pivots off of something and it takes forever. Just the bend don't break is just not a consistent way. When you have guys that can fly around and make plays, like, let them make some plays. But when you have to sit back, but don't be so predictable that, I mean, I can't believe the runs they were ripping off between those guys. Like, it was ridiculous.
So can I interest you in some stats? I do indeed have them in front of me. Can I interest you in some stats that are actually bad and will make you upset?
Throw them my way.
All right. So the first one, the easy counting stat here, the Pats ran for 5.1 yards per carry in this game. That is unforgivable when you know exactly what is coming. You know that Bill Belichick, a guy who last year with a first-round pick threw the ball 3 times in a game, you know they are going to run the ball at you. You cannot be giving up 5 yards in attempts to 2 guys who are fine, but they're not exactly great in Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And I guess Kendrick Bourne had a 15-yard run in the game as well. So these are from Pro Football Focus. The Packers tackling grade through 4 weeks this season, 56.2 defensively. It's not miserable. It's not good either. That currently ranks 18th out of 32 teams in the NFL. So clearly some room to improve. And a team that was actually really good at tackling last year, you would hope for a little bit better from that group. How about run defense? That's where things get really gross. Team grade 41.3. That is 30th in the NFL. You added a first-round pick at linebacker. You added a first-round pick on the defensive line, You went out and got Jaron Reed. You have Kenny Clark. Devondre Campbell was an all-pro a year ago. you've got a freak show off the edge in Rashawn Gary and another player in Preston Smith, who I actually thought had a very solid game against New England. You have got to get more against the run when you've got a group like that. You have invested too much to be 30th in the NFL in success against the run.
Dude, the tackling grade alone too. Like you had mentioned last week, you thought Devondre Campbell had a decent game. I saw otherwise, and statistics will tell us. Like, there was the tweet that kept going around today that he's got like 6 missed tackles or something throughout, or 4 missed, whatever it was. He's already almost exceeded the missed tackles he had all year, like last year. That's a slippery slope, because the Packers have been, we've as fans, not as recent as the run defense, have been critical of their tackling. I don't think that is a point of concern. It might just be a small blip on the radar, but definitely something to be concerned about if it continues, because tackling has been an issue in the past, and run defense and tackling kind of do go hand in hand.
Yep.
So I think it'll get sorted out. I really, really do. I think it's just a couple pieces here and there that just aren't clicking the way they need to be. Devondre Campbell's one for me. Quay Walker just getting more use of the defense. Secondary. I mean, Amos going on that game impacted a decent amount too, but like, he's not the only guy that can stop the run out there.
Yeah.
Ford had a great game as well then, but end of the day, I think it's going to get sorted out. They did go up against some decent running teams. Like, it's going to get figured out. I'm very confident. Joe Barry's just got to kind of wake up a little bit. He's a little bit too, sleeping behind the wheel.
And I will say, because the numbers support your theory on Devondre Campbell, this game against New England, 41.9 grade. That's not good, folks. That's in the dark orange on the PFF color scale, okay? That is certainly not good for a guy who last year was a PFF darling. Pro Football Focus loved Devondre Campbell last year. Not so much against New England, and really overall not all that much to start off this 2022 season. Let's get to what's coming up this week, Matt. Week 5 of the season, Packers, Giants, and for the first time ever, the Packers are going to London for this competition. The Giants are 3-1 to start the year. They beat the Bears in, you know what? I've been saying that the Packers game has been ugly throughout the show today. If that's ugly, then Bears Giants is like the most hideous beast of a wretch you have ever seen in your entire life. A gross football game. The Giants won 20-12. They're 3-1 on the year. What's your initial take on this matchup? Again, from London. It's such a fascinating thing. Packers are getting a home game overseas. I really never thought it was going to happen. What do you expect to see out of the Giants and Packers this weekend?
I never thought it was going to happen either. I expect a W from the Packers. I do think that Daniel Jones, the way he's been moving around the last couple of weeks, is somewhat concerning, or his whole career, I should say. He's always been able to move. I think there almost couldn't be a more fraudulent 3-1 team than the Giants, because I mean, they're not playing very good teams. I know the Titans started slow. They're getting a little bit hotter here. Panthers are in a dumpster fire. Cowboys, I don't know how. I mean, they lost that game, obviously, but like, I felt like even Cooper Rush, the way he's been playing, they should have beat them by more than a touchdown in that game. And they played the Bears. Like, it's just, they're not scoring a ton of points. They broke 21 points once. And that was in week 1. Everything else has been around 20 points, 17 points. So my expectations are pretty high. Travel can screw you up a little bit. I do think the Packers are a very well-oiled machine. They've thought about everything. I think there was a tweet I saw earlier today about someone had asked about the plans for the team traveling. They said they're keeping that in-house, which is understandable. There's a lot of logistics involved, but I'm sure they've seen every other team, because the Packers are the last team, right? The 32nd team to finally get to an out-of-U.S. game.
Yeah.
So they've probably talked to friends in the industry, whether it's, GM to GM or training staff to training staff. Like, how do you make this go smooth? Because there's a lot of data. Like, we've seen, like, what issues you have logistically. How can we make this as best as possible? But there is always those factors. You never know. Like, it's just going to be it's just a very strange game to have to play. But I do like the Packers in this game. I think the Giants are. It's nice to see the Giants perform well. There's not a lot of teams I like to see do terrible. I think when the Giants are a good football team, it makes the NFL a little bit better product. I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer for them. It's cool that he's kind of teasing us along the way, but they're going to get into a tough stretch here with a couple games. They got us, Ravens, Jaguars back to back. Probably going to end, I would imagine maybe right at 500 at the end of October if they squeak on it against the Seahawks. So I don't think they're that good of a squad. They're depleted everywhere when it comes to the receiving core. However, they still have that dude Saquon Barkley who looks faster, thinner, stronger, and more explosive than he ever has. So based off of how they've stopped the run recently, point of concern or an opportunity for a get-back game, you decide. But right now it's a little bit concerning the way they've been able to run the ball and effectively with truly no weapons at receiver at this point. They're completely just – they have nothing at receiving core. I think Kenny Galladay is going to be out for this game too. Not that he's been a contributing factor ever since he's been with the Giants, but they're down pretty bad, and they're going to have to rely on the run, and hopefully the Packers can stop it because that's what the Patriots had to do this week, and they were still able to establish it with Bailey Zappi back there.
Yeah, I think that is, if I've got one positive and one negative look ahead take on this game, the negative is the Giants' best player has been Saquon Barkley. And I like Saquon a lot. I am so happy to see him back and thriving and looking like the guy we thought he could be coming out of Penn State several years ago now. We just spent a whole segment, Matt, talking about how many concerns we've got with this Packers run defense. Now, with all the talent and hopefully Joe Barry's coaching, the Packers are going to end up by the end of the year when things matter the most being okay against the run. Right now, though, coming off a game in which Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson got over 5 yards of carry, don't feel especially great going up against Saquon Barkley. And I've got to give Brian Dable and his offensive coordinator and play caller, Mike Kafka, a lot of credit. They have done a great job with this Giants team. They are clearly limited because they have very little wide receiver talent. It sucks that Sterling Shepard got hurt. They do not have the guy at quarterback in Daniel Jones, or if he's too injured to go, it would be Tyrod Taylor. Neither of those guys is all that scary, and yet they have still somehow found a way to win 3 games in 4 weeks. And fraudulent, yes, 100%. I agree with you entirely, but they've still got those 3 wins, so I think they deserve credit for that. So Saquon is the scary part of this because he has been so good to start the year. Here's the upside of this matchup, though. I think the area where maybe we can see some clear hope, and I mean, we should have hope. The Packers are a better team than the Giants. The Giants against the pass have not been especially good to start this year. Again, these numbers are from PFF. Giants are 23rd in the NFL in pass coverage grade so far this year. And then I wanted to see the breakdown week by week of how they've done against their opponents. The best game they had this season in pass coverage was against the team that has arguably, depending on what stats you look at, the worst quarterback in the NFL this season. That's Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. The best quarterback they faced thus far is probably Ryan Tannehill because they played the Cowboys, but with Cooper Rush, not Dak Prescott. The best quarterback they've probably played this year is Ryan Tannehill. Old Ryan Tannehill for the Titans, and they were awful against the pass. Coverage grade from PFF under 48, 47.7. That is terrible. So my optimistic hope here is that with a little bit of momentum from the second half of the Patriots game, with Romeo Doubs getting confident, with a little more Christian Watson in the game plan, and with Allen Lazard, again, having the quietest 116-yard game of all time, that this might be the game where Aaron Rodgers can air it out and look like that MVP we've seen over the last couple of seasons. That's definitely where I think the Packers can take advantage of some definite weaknesses on the other side of the field. That's a Giants defense that doesn't have James Bradbury on the back end anymore, who was just okay last year, but was an excellent player 2 years ago. So that's obviously a big loss for them coming out of this offseason. So with that, let's get to significant to some for week 5. It'll be overseas. So we've got the Lunder in play here. The over-under 41.5. I stole that from Pardon My Take. My apologies. The Lunder is in play, though. Packers are favored by 7.5. That's an ugly number. That is not a pretty number by any means. You drop that a point, you give me 6.5. Yes, I hammering the Packers. Even at 7, I would say, yes, that's a no-doubter. That hook, I don't love it. So where do you land? Again, over under 41.5. Packers favored by 7 and a hook.
We're not financial advisors or betting advisors.
If you saw my picks from this weekend, you would know, not a financial advisor.
However, some decisions are better maybe made later. You don't have to act on it tonight. You don't even have to act on it tomorrow, Tuesday, when you're hearing the pod version. maybe see if the line moves. Get rid of that 7.5, get it to 7, 6.5 would be ideal. Maybe just kind of sit and wait. Maybe there's a better line that comes out that you like. I would say I would take the Giants with the points. I think that's a safe bet, especially with the hook. It's a neutral site. London games, I love London. That's hilarious. London games, I just feel like they're always going to be a tighter matchup. I would say the Packers are going to cover, or I would say the Giants are going to cover. You said, what was the total? 41.5?
41.5 is what I saw from a certain book where fans do some dueling.
Dueling fans sounds good. I'm going to go. It means it would be kind of an ugly stinker again.
Right.
I'm going to, 24-17? Under?
Yeah, I can see it.
24-17 Packers, I guess. So
that'd
definitely
be just barely on the right side of the number if you were betting on the Giants. I think if my math is correct here, the implied score of this game is something like 22-14, 21-14 Packers. I mean, that probably sounds about right.
You did a really good job, though, in selling me that we'd be able to throw the ball more, too. That's why I almost want to go more points. But, I'm not going to definitively, rule that as, it's going to happen just because the secondary for the Giants sucks. Because we've seen they've already gone against some depleted secondaries. So, I'm going to stick 24-17.
I think I'm going to go with the homer points pick here. I'm going to take the Packers. I think Rodgers is going to be able to throw on this secondary. And I'm going to go with the over in this game, too. I look at it pretty much this way. I think the Packers offense is going to have a good game. I really do have faith that between the passing game, we haven't even talked about the running backs, by the way. Aaron Jones was awesome against
we haven't said anything about them. Not a word. Which
I guess that's a good thing to a degree. Hey, they went out, they are asked to do a lot, and they took care of it all beautifully. Aaron Jones was amazing against the Patriots. He ended up, I had his stats in front of me a moment ago. I just put the box score away. He had 16 carries for 110 yards, averaged 6.9 yards a carry. Nice. So he was fantastic. They go to A.J. Dillon at the end of the game. The exact reason you have A.J. Dillon to hold on to the ball and to be a battering ram at the end of the game and wear down defenses. That's what they used him for in overtime. They've been excellent. I think they're going to continue to be excellent against the Giants. And I really do think Rodgers is going to be able to air the ball out here. I would look for Romeo Doubs to get another 5 to 7 catches or so. I think Lazard, if he can keep that momentum going, that would be great. Maybe you try to get Watson more involved, especially if you get out to an early lead. I also am going to guess there's at least 2 touchdowns in this game for the Giants. The Packers have not made a stop on the opening drive for their opponents throughout the first 4 weeks of the season. All 4 teams that the Packers have faced through weeks 1 through 4 have scored at least a field goal on their opening drive. That's not great. So I'm just going to say, you know what? That's a touchdown. Saquon's going to score on the first drive, so there's 1. I expect at least 1 touchdown in the second half. Wow, Saquon, great game. There's 2 touchdowns. Okay, fine. So you've got at least 13 or 14 points there for the Giants. I think the Packers are going to put up at least 4 touchdowns in this game. I really do. So I'm going to take the over. I like the passing game. Call me an idiot, maybe Homer, maybe one or the other, maybe both. Maybe they're connected. I really do think the Packers offense is going to have its happy learned how to putt game coming up on Sunday morning. I got to wake up early for this. I cannot tell you how much I hate waking up early because I stay up till all hours of the night. Like tonight, I'll probably go to bed at like 3:30 or 3:30 Central Time. That's approximately when I go to bed. So I don't like waking up early ever, but I will do it for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur, I will do it for you. So please don't disappoint me.
It's gonna be wild, man. Like even this weekend, I got up actually on time to watch the game, the Vikings Saints game, and I kind of laid in bed a little bit, started checking the box score, seeing what I was in, and then it's just tough to dive in. Now it's different for a Packers game, completely different, but man, just absolute degenerate behavior, just getting up that early just to sit in another 2.5, 3 hours. You add it to the front end of that, and you're just like, what are we doing? We're just watching it all the time. Like it's just, I love it. It's great. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be ugly. I know the Packers fans will travel well. I'm hopeful that's highlighted, but 2 fan bases that'll travel damn well. Unfortunate the Queen couldn't see this game. I'm sure that's where her dying wishes. Exactly. But, at the end of the day, Packers are going to stomp the Giants, I think. Little slight breaking news as we're recording. Odell Beckham did visit the Giants again. I think he had a conversation last week, so he visited them again today. Seems like they could absolutely use someone like with his talents right now where they're at. Crazy that it could possibly come full circle. That's what I thought about last week, but now with more injuries there, it almost seems like could be a situation. Maybe this is the Odell Beckham Bowl. Whoever wins it gets Odell Beckham, because there are some rumors that he might end up in Lambeau again, surprisingly. But just a little caveat there as we wrap up.
No, that is a very interesting note. I can't imagine he would play this week, although who knows? It's Odell Beckham and it's the NFL. That's about the perfect combination for unpredictability. We are excited for the game, though. We'll be getting up early and watching it coming up on Sunday morning live from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. You can follow along with us all week as we get ready for the game. Matt's on Twitter at Matt_FRA_. I'm on Twitter as well at BrendanDZW. And of course, follow Game On Wisconsin on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere at Game On WI. We'll have coverage all week long, all of our shows, all of our blogs leading up to the contest. Also, a little plug for the undefeated and 19th ranked Kansas Jayhawks. If you're up Saturday morning, look for your boy in Lawrence on College Game Day, because it is coming to town. First time ever. You know that I am going to be there for that. Had to get my college plug in there. But Matt, I'm excited for this week. I really do think the Packers are going to have their breakout game. And now at this point, I've gone so far into it so early in the week. I hope that's the case, because I really don't want to look like an idiot again.
No, I can assure you at some point in your life, you will look like an idiot again. I can guarantee that, as will I. But no, you're going to have a hell of a weekend, dude. Like, that is going to be unbelievable. TCU in town, College Game Day in Lawrence. Like, that's going to be electric. I think that's the game I have to watch, just based off the fact that, like,
that's right.
Every week I feel like we're getting into this. I'm like, how did Kansas do? It was the first couple weeks you would update me. Now I'm like, oh shit, like, I wonder. I'm scheduling plans for you that, like, I'm like, oh man, he's gonna have to get involved. Like, it's gonna be a big thing. But I don't know if this is the game that the Packers get right, just because it is a London game. Giants can be able to run the ball very well, but I think this is a step in the right direction. We should take some positives from it. Let's see if we can limit Saquon to less than 100 yards. That would be a goal. I think Joe Barry in the front seven should have.
Yeah, that would certainly be a good start for this Packers team. We're looking forward to it. For Matt Freilich, I am Brendan Dworzinski. We will talk to you coming up next week as we get ready for Jets week, and of course a Giants recap, hopefully of a Packers win to get to 4-1 on the season. Until then, you have been listening and watching the latest edition of The Final Dump, as always brought to you by Game On Wisconsin.
Well, Wayne, I think this is one that Vince Lombardi and George Hallis would be proud of.
You could have given me the touchdown. Then it's hard to overturn. You know what I mean?
I understand.
That's a good effort, though, wasn't it? Pretty good effort.